Welcome to the Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I am Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz Makhani. Shahnavaz, this episode we are going to be talking about MVP. Dang, third place, man. And some good news: the Mavs split the series against the number one team in the West. They're coming back and having Game 3 tomorrow afternoon. Yep. So, Shahnavaz, obviously, we have a lot to deep dive into the series with the Mavs and Thunder, especially their fans.
Oh boy!
My goodness,
we do a whole episode on them.
The Thunder fans make Mavs Twitter just look like private school goody two shoes, man. Because Thunder,
they're all Green Hill alumnus.
the Thunder fans have obviously nothing to do with Oklahoma City, but we'll get into that. So, Shahnavaz, first of all, MVP voting, the three finalists we all knew, Jokic, SGA, and Luka. Jokic finished first with 926 votes, and then SGA had, was it 840 or 640?
640, and then Luka.
I don't have my glasses. Thank you, Shahnavaz.
Yeah, 640, and Luka at 566.
So, dang, third place. I mean, Shahnavaz, we've been talking about this for the past few months.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we thought Luka would do better than that. What's your analysis on that voting for the top three for MVP?
We've talked about this for so long. It's such a tired conversation at this point of like what qualifies as like MVP vote now, right? It's is it stats? Is it record? Is it likability? Is it I mean there's so many factors that go into it, and I don't understand because Luka had the best numbers of any. He had the best season of his career. I mean, like he, points wise, true shooting percentage, any analytical number you want to look at, he had the best season of his career. Played the best defense of his career. The Mavericks finished fifth in the West after not making the playoffs last year. They were one of, if not the hottest team down the stretch after the trade deadline, and yet he finishes third because the Thunder and Nuggets finished with top three seeds.
Well, they had the third. What was it? The third most injuries in the league. I mean, there's so many things that go into that, man. That's just crazy.
So it's just like I don't know what constitutes this, and I've been thinking about this since the vote came out, and I'm working on something. I'm doing a little research, but I'm working on something to see. And maybe we can. Hopefully, I'll have it ready by next week. But
okay.
I think this was Luka's best chance to win MVP. There is a very good possibility he may never win an MVP award.
Whoa!
There is a very good. He's not deserving. I'm saying there's a very good chance he may never win one, and it's not because he's deserving or lack of him being. I mean, he definitely deserves it, right? Let's be clear. But I think if you look at. And this is why I want to back up my statement with research, right? I don't want to go out there.
Just a little cliffhanger, okay? Stay tuned next week.
Every year we go in with a perceived favorite, or who is going to be. Last year it was, well, we can't give it to Jokic because he won 2 in a row, so let's give it to Embiid. And so this year it was, well, Jokic technically deserved it last year, so he's the favorite. And now it's, well, Oklahoma City's a young team and they're the number 1 seed. And so let's give it to Shea. Now these playoffs, you're seeing the emergence of Anthony Edwards. So going into next year, Luka's already at a disadvantage with Shea and Anthony Edwards, I think. And so unless Dallas finishes with the number 1 seed and he just puts up the same numbers and even better percentages, I don't think he's going to sniff a top 2 finish next year. I want to look into this because I find it very interesting to see preseason kind of, what it looks like, or like, who won the MVP the year before and what, how did that translate to the year after? I'm going to put together some stuff, but it sucks because it's just like, what more is he supposed to do? And what is the criteria? Because we remember Westbrook winning it as a 6 seed. Jokic won his first as a 6 seed. And it's like every year there's different criteria changing for who should be the MVP. And it's like, there's no clear cut answer anymore.
That is you going all in on this, and I like it. Um, first of all, before I respond, um, I just want to apologize for last week on the background. I don't know. I was doing like 5 things that day.
You were busy last week. That was a crazy
It
day for
was,
you.
it was like Mission Impossible, but we have to get this pod. So it's like I had everything down to the T, and then I left the house for dinner, and I was checking the pod, make sure everything was good. The whole background was not even on the pod, and we had positive feedback. So I
Yeah.
don't know if it's people don't care about the aesthetics or the visuals.
They care about
but
us. That's
they
what
care
they care
about
about.
you
Yeah.
and I and the content. So
There
I
you go.
appreciate everyone listening, supporting. Make sure y'all follow us. Y'all see our names on there. So make sure y'all follow us and subscribe. We appreciate y'all. Appreciate the support. So I just had to say it. I just had to publicly apologize, like a Draymond Green apology the
There you
next
go.
day for my behavior. So back to Luka. I mean, I like how you gave us a little preview, but that's definitely something that we can deep dive into next week. And I think I don't know. I'm MVP is so weird, like you said, with the voters. There's no set criteria at all, so it's either your beliefs, your opinion, or what you saw, or how someone else votes, your conversations. I mean, there's how someone plays at the beginning of the season, how someone ends the season, the totality of the season. Every person's voting is different.
Yeah.
Like you said, who gets pushed the most, or who the narrative from last season, the narrative from playoffs. There's so many factors that go involved in how people vote for MVP. And my stance is not like Jaren Jackson Jr. was on TNT the other day with the crew, and he said it's the best player on the best team. And then Shaq and Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith. I mean, they have their opinions on the MVP voting. Honestly, I think it should have came down to Jokic and Luka. If you base your vote on true value, which is my opinion is
Yeah.
the most valuable player on a team, if you take that player out, how do you think the impact is to that team? That's what most valuable player should be. But in that case, if it's best player on best team, it would have been Tatum. It wouldn't even been those guys. So I don't think that takes into account because he didn't even make the top 5. So it was Jokic, SGA, Luka. It was Giannis, and then Brunson. So, and that's what I think. I think because SGA, don't get me wrong, SGA is a top player in this league. He's a top 6, 7 player in this league. I mean, he's really good. But value, that team had the least injuries of the season, and they were really good as a team. I mean, they're 11 deep. They have the coach of the year. I mean, he's gonna, even if SGA was out, obviously they wouldn't be top 3, but they would be a playoff team just with Chet, his surgeons, and then Jalen Williams. I mean, Williams is a rising star in this league. Yeah. So I think they would have done good. I mean, if you took Luka off this season, I mean, Kyrie missed so many games. He was hurt, and Luka was going off. He was going off every month. It wasn't even like, oh, he just did good the last few months. He was even better in the first half of the season when guys were out. THJ and Luka were the only guys scoring.
Yeah.
And then
and there's also this whole like national media like bias toward, or like I guess unfavorable bias towards him, right? Like this talk of he doesn't play defense and his usage rate's too high, and he plays with Kyrie and complains to the refs, and like all, and it's like, what are you guys watching? Like, this isn't the Luka of like 2 years ago where he's, yes, he still complains to the refs, but look at the defense he's been playing, man. Like,
Yeah, he's
and
improved.
him having the ball in his hands, like, that's just the way it flows. Somebody posted this the other day, and it was like the juxtaposition of like, I think it was an article on The Ringer, and it was like, well, Luka's got a high usage rate, and that's bad. And he's played with stars like Porzingis and Brunson and couldn't get it done. Teammates don't like him. Versus Jalen Brunson's usage rate is high in New York. Good, that's awesome. Stars take over. That's what they're. It's like, how can what kind of argument is that? That's so ridiculous.
It really is, and I'll tell you right now where my stance is on it. Why would you want to get first of all, why would you want to get the ball out of a top 3 player's hands? I mean, You didn't see this narrative when LeBron was early in his career and he had the ball. And then second of all, if you look at stats in the league and you look at just the top 2 players on a team, it's Luka and Kyrie. Like you're not seeing Luka and then there's a massive drop.
Right.
Just like usage rate, points per game, assist, doing 25-5-5. I mean, there's so many there's so many parameters on stats where you have Luka and Kyrie. It seems like every stat that you have clutch. I mean, there's every stat that you have, there's Luka and Kyrie as the first set of teammates on a list. So it's not like it's Luka and other guys, like it was earlier in his season. Let's be honest. Like it's Luka and Kyrie as co-stars, and they're just dominating. And then you have defenders and shooters who haven't shot really well until game 2 against the Thunder. That's really the makeup of the team because they're forgetting who Kyrie is. And he is a superstar. Look at his stats. That's all-star. If he was healthy, that's all-star and all-NBA.
All-NBA.
He was only a few shots from a 50-40-90 season. That's tough. But I think with Luka, and this is why I think Luka does have a chance, is because he is, his superstardom is ignored at the national media level, but they still vote for him. So he still gets all NBA first team. He still gets third MVP voting. So I think the next level, and I want to deep dive into this next week with you, but I think I'll end it with this. I think the next level for him to win over the national media is to sustain his success and the team success that they did the last few seasons over a course of next season, or where you have a top 3 seed.
Got to finish
that's
top.
The only thing I would say.
Yeah, I think that's and we'll get into it more next week, but I want to look at that in terms of like what does that look like from a seeding perspective? Like, do the Mavs have to finish with a 1 seed just with all these factors that are working against him? And even then, like, is that going to be enough? Like, that's the worry.
Individually, there's nothing else he can do.
There's nothing, like, it has nothing to do with him, right? I think it's this whole national media pushback against him and this love for, and rightfully so, like Shea and Ant are both great players. They're both going to, be stars in this league for a long time.
Yeah.
But man, like, you gotta, the season that Luka had, like the finishing third in MVP voting is just disrespectful to him.
Yeah, I think he should have finished no lower than second.
Yeah.
I think SGA deserved third. Let me just put that right on. But the season that he's had has not been done before. And and I said this before, the 5th seed is a huge disparity on reality of what it really is, because they were 5th seed, but they were tied for 6th best record in the league.
Yeah.
So, there's really nothing that they could have done or he could have done to better his MVP standing this year. But from a national from removing myself and looking outside in, I just think that if he had a top 3 record, or a top 4, not even 4, if a top 3 record. Yeah. I think he will be, no doubt, the MVP next season. So if he gets that, he'll get it. If not, then all those other layers of, just neglecting his greatness it still stands. I mean, look who's voting. It's not like
Yeah.
it's the traditional voters. I mean, now it's more TV guys. I mean, not TV guys, because TV it's more clickbait guys. Instead of opposed to 10 years ago, it was all like journalists, like
Full journalists,
traditional actual journalists, instead of just media members like me. I mean, like, let's be honest here. I mean, it's a different wave, and once the SGA push was there the last month, I mean, it kind of pushed votes the last month before voting. Not the last month, because we've been in playoffs, but the last month before voting, the ESPN push for him, and just different national guys pushing for SGA, which he deserves love. He deserves love, but he was not more valuable than Luka and Jokic. Jokic deserves the MVP. I'm not saying he doesn't.
Definitely.
Jokic, we said it on this pod. I mean, we both said it. I think Luka should have won it, but Jokic is I have no complaints. Like, he is the most valuable person in this league, but I think Luka's right next to him.
I agree. I completely agree. I'm just, I'm worried about, this narrative, and you talk about Shea and Ant, and let's not forget, if San Antonio improves and somehow sneaks into a playoff spot, Wemby's going to get a lot of looks, and Wemby's he's going to steal some votes there. If the Bucks rebound, if Philly rebound, I mean, Giannis, Embiid, like, there's so many things that are working against him, unfortunately, that it's just like, I felt like this was the chance, like this was the opportunity for him, because you can't count on him to have this kind of season again. I mean, this was, well, if anybody can do it, it's him, obviously, right? But to have a historic season like he did and have it go unnoticed, I mean, we just have to hope he uses that as fuel for the fire, going forward these, the next month or two in the playoffs.
I agree with you. There's a lot of guys who would get pushed more than him, but I think with him, I think he said it. It's all about a championship. I mean, I think he'd rather have a finals MVP more than a regular season MVP. I mean, honestly, the trajectory of his career will equate to a MVP. I mean, the trajectory of his career, because it's looking like the next 5 years, at least, he'll be all NBA first team.
Yeah.
I mean, unless someone just overpowers him. I mean, because now it's about the 5 best. It's not about position. Right. So he'll definitely be at least the next 5. Yeah. So you're talking about a guy who's going to be a 10-time all NBA first team.
He's 30.
By the time he's 30, and then you can talk about a second team or a third team, down the road. Like, I think that equates MVP. Obviously, true competitors want an MVP, but just based on the fact of who's been all NBA first team that many times. I mean, what, LeBron and I don't know who, Tim Duncan and Kobe, those type of Michael Jordan, those type of players. I got to look at the list, but he's on that path. So I think he's going to be good no matter what, but I think he wants a championship and a finals MVP more than a regular season MVP.
Yeah. LeBron's got the most first team all NBA, 13.
13?
Kobe's got 11. Malone's got 11. And then you've got a group of about 7 that have 10, including Jordan, Kareem, Tim.
7. Okay.
Guys like that.
So Luka is on the path to win his 5th, right, in 6 years, in 6 seasons, and so 5 more seasons when he turns 30.
He's gonna have 10.
10. And look at the guys you just listed that have 13 and 11 and 10.
That's crazy. And I think he could easily get, 13, 14 first team.
Especially when it's not just 2 guard spots. Like, you see SGA and him and Ant.
SGA, now Ant, Wemby. You pencil those guys in for the next 10 years. They can all be on
the first team. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be just 2 of the guards or those type of players.
Man, the West is stacked. It's crazy.
It is. Just wait till expansion.
No boy. Bring it to Seattle. Come on, Adam Silver.
Vegas.
Yeah.
Who? Okay, so before we get to the series, I know everyone wants to. Is that what they're tuned in for? If Seattle and Vegas get expansions, let's just say in the next few years, 4 years, because that would make 17 in the West. You have to move one over to the East to make 16-16, like hockey.
Yeah.
So who would you rather move to the West? Would it be Memphis or Minnesota?
Ooh, move them to the East?
I mean, yeah, the East. Who would you rather move
Did you
to
put
the
Vegas
East?
in the East?
No, Vegas is in the West. So you got
Vegas.
Seattle and Vegas in the West.
Okay, so you'd have to move.
So 17, and then you got to move one over to the East.
That's tough because they're both like central, so it's not really like
Exactly.
Eastern Conference teams.
And the East needs one of them back because Ja Morant's coming back.
Yeah, that's tough.
But Minnesota's young core, that'll be nice to rival Boston.
Yeah.
They're close to Chicago, Indiana, Milwaukee.
The East badly needs like a young. I would say Minnesota. I think the East badly needs like a young the Eastern version of OKC, right? That's kind of what Minnesota would be.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah.
I think that would be. You pencil them in the finals then for the next 5 years if that happens.
Boston will finally have some competition.
There you
go. Okay, so I'm going to do that in 2K tonight.
Let's do it. I love it.
All right, so Shahnavaz, what is your thoughts? The Mavericks tie the season the playoff series 1-1 against the number 1 team in the West, OKC Thunder. They're coming back tomorrow afternoon to have the most pivotal game. This is game 3 to get real momentum in this series. Kind of like that Boston series with Cleveland. That's just as important. But what's your thoughts on the series? How players are playing, the fans? Just what's your thoughts on the series thus far?
I'm gonna leave the fans to you because you've had some fun interactions with them, so I'll let you take care of that. I said Mavericks would win in 6. I kind of figured Oklahoma City's going to win the first game. I think Jason Kidd's notorious for losing the first game of a series, but it's always about how you respond, right? You know, the Mavericks are 0-5 in game 1s under Jason Kidd, and not counting this series, they've won 3 of the next 4 series. Like they beat Utah, they beat Phoenix, and they beat the Clippers. The only one they lost was the Golden State in the conference finals a couple of years ago. So it's all about how you respond. The Mavericks did a fantastic job. It almost always feels like game 1 is just like a feel out game for the Mavs, right? Like they try to play like their style, you know, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, you know, with respect to the Clippers too. And it's like, let's see how they come out. What's their game plan? How are they going to attack? And then you make adjustments in game 2. And you knowing that you've got guys like Luka and Kyrie, you can easily adjust your play style, and the roster that you have now gives you the flexibility to be able to do that. If they're going to crowd the paint and not let you throw those oops, good. Then you know what you got to do? You got to make sure PJ and Josh Green and even Tim Hardaway Jr. are going to start knocking down those shots because they're going to be wide open if they're going to clog the paint. And that's exactly what happened last night. You know, and I think it was Kyrie who said it, that they talked to the role players and said, you guys are going to get your shots. You know, you guys have to hit those. Hats off to, I mean, we've seen PJ Washington have great games, but man, Josh Green, you and I have talked about this endlessly.
Yeah.
The improvement that he's made since coming back from injury, my goodness, man, he's looking like a key vital piece. And hats off to Tim Hardaway Jr. for, you know, even though he struggled game 1, I mean, 17 points off the bench, you know, the huge, you know, 3-and-1 that he had, hit some really, really big shots, made some great passes. That alley-oop to Derek Lively was wonderful. And Kyrie Irving, man, to score 9 points and lead your team in assists and take kind of a back seat as a leader and get everyone else involved, knowing that, hey, I can get mine when I need it, you know, when it's required of me. But right now, everyone else is cooking, so let them work. That was phenomenal. That was an all-around team win last night for the Mavericks. And if, you know, game 3 is huge. Like you said, winner of game 3 wins the series about 72% of the time. So tomorrow, I have no doubt the American Airlines Center is going to be nuts. Dallas has done well in game 3s, you know, in their, you know, under Jason Kidd. But man, if the Mavericks play like they did last night, and this is without a fully healthy Luka, without Kyrie going off, to me it's mind blowing that Kyrie only scored 9 points. Like that's just insane to me. It was a great win. I mean, there's nothing. It was great adjustments by Jason Kidd. The role players stepped up when they needed to, and role players generally play better at home. And so to see that kind of performance on the road, now you get 2 back at home. Dallas has a chance to do some real damage and take a really, really good lead going back into Oklahoma City next week.
Yeah, you said it. You said it well. I mean, there's so many layers of this game that you can be proud of. I mean, the role players really stepping up. Josh Green, like you said, we've been looking for this type of Josh Green, for the whole season, for the whole duration of the season. Just what he's done and how he's really. You really don't know his playing style. I mean, one day he's a Mr. Hustle, all around there like Caruso, and the next day he's just a shooter. The next day, he's a defender. I mean, he's really putting it together in the playoffs. Because he's doing all three. He's shooting well. Yeah. He's defending. He's fighting over screens. He's hustling, getting offensive rebounds, and doing the intangibles. And that's what you want to see from him, especially, after giving him an extension, giving him a contract saying that, hey, we believe in you to take the next step. And you're seeing it in the playoffs when it matters the most. So who cares what he did in the regular season? Okay, Mr. Green, this is why you got the green.
That's how you step up, man.
And that's how you step up. So kudos to him, and kudos to Tim Hardaway Jr. I said it before the series. I think he's going to be huge this series. And after game 1, everyone came in my mentions and just saying he was huge for OKC. But I just knew it was going to be a long series. I mean, he's not that bad in the playoffs. I mean, he's just not what you expected as a number 3 guy or number 4 as one of your key guys. But he's super streaky where he'll win you a game.
Yeah.
And he won them a game. I mean, he scored 17 points, and he was on a run that was like 7-0, 9-0, where he did all the scoring.
Yeah.
And that's what you need from him, just to have a couple really good games in this series. It doesn't have to be every game, but just to take the Mavs over the edge. And then PJ Washington, I mean, his tenacity and he's really become one of the leaders on this team, just like I guess you would say, emotional leader. He really is stepping up for this team, and just the offensive outpour that you saw, because we know defensively he is a leader on the team, but offensively his shot was great. 7 of 11 from 3, and the floater game was great. And then a couple dunks. I mean, what more can you ask from him? 29 points and 2 steals, 4 assists, 11 rebounds. I mean, 1 block. He was incredible, and that's what you want to see from him, because I think, like I said, I think he can be a third option next season. He just needs to be comfortable in the system, when to be aggressive, and when he makes shots. I mean, we've said it, you've said it. If he just makes a couple more threes, that's his 17 points per game or 18 points per game. So I thought he was phenomenal. I thought Kidd was phenomenal in adjustments, like you just mentioned, bouncing back from game 1 loss. That's all Kidd knows is game 1 losing, and then how do I adjust, and how do I get my teams riled up and stepped up and watching film and dissect the game footage on how to be better. And the last thing, the 2 stars stepping up in different ways. I mean, it seemed like it was role reversal, where Kyrie was the PG and setting everybody up, and Luka was a scorer. Obviously Luka still had 7 points, but like, he was truly the scorer of that game. And then Kyrie was just phenomenal. Kyrie should have 15, 16 assists in that game, honestly, if we're really looking at the game, because there was a lot of missed shots off of his potential assist. So he had 11. He tied a playoff career high in assists. And I thought it was beautiful. His defense really stepped up. He talked about this, where he said, his maturity when he was younger, and he saw the box score. I'm just looking up, and looking at the score on how many points he had, he wouldn't have had those type of games where, okay, let me impact the game in different ways.
Yeah.
He would just shoot more. So now he has the maturity, he has the growth, he has the leadership, he has the understanding, and it's Kyrie. He has the game and the talent to score when he wants to, but he's patient to give the Mavs what they need. So we've seen it in this playoffs where, okay, the Mavs need scoring. I'm going to get 18, 19 points a game in the second half. This game, he didn't need to do that because PJ, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Green, the guys you mentioned, were scoring. So he said, let me keep giving these guys the ball because I'm going to need them later in the series.
Yeah.
So I thought that was phenomenal.
And a huge leadership move by him to get their confidence levels up because, like you said, they're going to need them. Like there's going to be close games. It wouldn't surprise me tomorrow and game 4 also are going to be tight games, and the Mavericks are going to need those 3 to step up in different ways. Josh Green's got to keep hustling like he is. The best thing about, there's always, and it's always like the sky is falling after a game 1 loss, but I always feel like game 2 is the most important, right? Because game 1 is always, first off, for Oklahoma City, you're at home. It's a young team.
Should have won.
You should have won game 1. Like 100%, the home team should win game 1. Game 2, then it's very similar to what we saw with Cleveland and Boston, right? It's the team that comes in there and makes the adjustments. What do you do? Can you steal momentum back to go back to your home floor, right? Because now you're not playing on their home floor for another 5-6 days. You've got a chance now to go back home and steal that momentum. So game 2 is always pivotal, and I feel like much more important than game 1 for the road team to take momentum back home and give yourself a chance to go up 3-1. I think the Mavericks just the way that this roster is now, and we've given a lot of credit to Nico Harrison. But and Jason Kidd, I mean, what he's done with the roster, and the role players themselves, like knowing their spots and knowing where to be on the floor, the defense that they've played, the fast breaks, Kyrie steals, Luka, the alley-oop to Derek Jones, which looked like it was supposed to be to Josh Green, but Derek Jones just kind of swooped in there for the dunk. I mean, it's fascinating to watch because this team, this was not expected at the beginning of the year, and the way that they've meshed together. And there's going to be games like game 1, the Mavericks got blown out twice against the Clippers and still won the series in 6, it's to be expected. Like, it's the playoffs. Things are going to happen. You're going to lose. Not every team is going to sweep every series, but it's how do you make those adjustments? How do you come back? And how do you put your players in the best situation to be successful? And that's exactly what the Mavericks did last night, was taking what OKC did in game 1, parlaying that into game 2. And now if you're Oklahoma City, Landon, what you've been doing, your game 1 and game 2 was let's sag off the role players. Let's clog the paint and let's get out. Let the role players, let them shoot, right? We're going to double Luka. We're going to double Kyrie. It's going to be really interesting to see how Oklahoma City comes out tomorrow defensively, because now in the back of Mark Daignault's mind, he's got to know Hardaway's got confidence. Josh Green's got confidence. PJ Washington can hit those shots.
And they're going home.
Yeah, and they're going to be at home. Role players play better at home. Now do you have to change your defensive scheme for a young team, the youngest team in the NBA that doesn't have a lot of experience, right? Do they get maybe confused on the defensive end? Are there going to be some mental lapses? It's going to be really, really interesting to see. And then for the Mavericks, when you've got a leader like Kyrie who's been in that situation before, for them to be ready to go and ready to play, having a guy like Kyrie who's been there, done that, won a championship, has been through the ringer, it's invaluable to have somebody like that with a roster that is, crazy to say it, is a young roster outside of Kyrie and Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point, because the Thunder need a guy like Kyrie.
Yeah.
And not even his talent. I'm talking about just the leadership and the experience that he has. He's been through every single scenario you can put him in. That's why he's always calm. And you see it in games. He's still calm when they're losing big. He's still calm when they're winning big. He's all about winning the game. And even the Thunder need a guy like Markieff Morris. I mean, just setting the guys and making sure they're always focused and locked in on the prize, and just don't panic, because this is the first time they've lost in this playoffs.
Yeah.
So you brought up a really good point. I'm very curious how they come out, because they should win this series. They should dominate
They're
this
the better
series.
team. There's no doubt.
They're the better team. They have the coach of the year. They have, the number one team in the Western Conference. So they should win this game. But they're all within 3 years in the league. So because if you're the Mavs being down, you don't panic. Like you don't even panic. Like, okay, Mavs should win this game, but they got Luka and Kyrie. I mean, Jason Kidd's coached before being down. Not those three guys don't panic. Yeah. And that's what's going to be very interesting tomorrow afternoon. Is obviously the OKC Thunder is not going to panic, because SGA, Chet, and Williams, they don't show it. But there's nerves. I mean, they've never been down in the playoffs before, and they're young. They've never even been in the playoffs. So,
and there's nerves. It's going to be a different environment, because Dallas,
and they're going to be on the road.
They're going to be on the road, and they played on the road in New Orleans, but I mean, that's not the same, right? New Orleans crowd is not like the Mavericks crowd, right? It's not like the Mavs fan base, and so it's going to be a very different kind of feel for them. This is going to be, and you look at the Mavericks. I mean, you've got Jason Kidd, who's a championship-winning player, championship-winning, assistant coach. The Mavericks have been in this position before. Kyrie's been in even in the playoffs a couple years ago when the Mavs made the run to the conference finals. They were down in every series. They were down to Utah, came back to win. They were down 2-0 to Phoenix, came back to win in 7. Like, they've been there, right? They were, they've been there. They've done it. They've got the experience there. Yes, they've got some young guys and like, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, who haven't been in playoff situations lively, but Luka has. Hell, Kyrie definitely has, right? Yeah. And Jason Kidd has. So
those are the leaders.
Those are your leaders, and that's a huge piece of it. When you're going up against a young team, is knowing that the sky's not falling. When you lose a game or when things are going bad, it's a 7-game series. You've got time to recover. You just have to keep pace. Even if you split every game, well, then you know what? It's a 3-game series. Then you got to win 2 out of 3. The benefit of having. There's so many benefits to having Kyrie Irving, but having him as the leader and being able to keep the locker room loose and keep them, we talked about it last week, like him telling players, like, do your normal routine, man. Like, it's just a game, it's another game, laughing and joking and playing, fooling around with each other, like, keep things loose and play your game. And that's what's going to make the Mavericks successful.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's honestly, surprising, but it's not surprising that the Mavs are doing really well, or in the second game, obviously, because I would not be surprised if the Thunder won this series. I would not be surprised if Thunder won Game 3, because they're supposed to.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised if the Mavs won this series. We both predicted them to win this series, and I wouldn't be surprised if Mavs win the next 2 games at home, because role players play better at home. So I just think Game 2 was so imperative for how the series was going to go. Like you mentioned, I mean, you don't want to go back home 0-2. Just imagine the pressure that Denver faces. Imagine the pressure that the Indiana Pacers face. That you do not. This is 0-2. Your back is against the wall. Even splitting against the Thunder, your back is against the wall, because every single game counts and matters. But that's, like you said, I am not worried for the Mavericks with the leaders that they have in place and what they've seen. I mean, every single spot on the team in the front office or the obviously the ownership is new, but minority ownership with Cuban, anyone in the basketball side of the house has been through this before. If they haven't been through it in their career, they've been through it a couple years ago, going to the Western Conference Finals and facing a number 1 team again in the West. They're poised. So you can just tell they're poised with this team. And like you said, I mean, even though Kyrie and THJ and hopefully if they advance or if they have a long series, Maxey comes back, those are the guys who are older. But this team is all like 26 and below or younger. And that's what's exciting to see is this team is not, they're getting experience within the experience. Like Nico said it the other day, this team is set up for not just to make a playoff run now, they're set up to make a playoff run the next few years. So and that's just who they have now. Imagine the offseason. Imagine, the next couple of years when this team can go 11 deep in the playoffs, So like when you keep collecting and adding pieces that you want, even Kid said it. When I asked him what makes a great team, he said patience and time and getting the right players.
Yeah.
That's why we both said this is a make or break year for Kid, and he made it. Like he got the extension, he did great because last year was not the team that he wanted. Like it wasn't the right players around each other, and they start making the moves. The first move was Kyrie and Markieff, and we always say Kyrie. I say it too, the Kyrie trade, but Markieff is just as big as Kyrie on this team, and they need to resign him just as much as Derrick Jones Jr. I mean, he really is the Theo Pinson of the team in a different way. Like he has the experience.
Yeah.
He has a championship. He actually played on a championship team. Like he's been in the league so long, and he's still relatively young. I mean, he's not around 40. Like he still can hoop when he gets the opportunity.
You could give him minutes if you wanted to. I thought with Maxey going down, we might see him a little bit.
Yes. But the Thunder is small. But if Maxey can't go, if let's say the Mavs advance and you have to play the Timberwolves or the Nuggets, if they make a miraculous comeback, you're going to need Markieff or you're going to need another big. And I'd rather have, Markieff than Powell just against the Timberwolves and the Nuggets, those type of bigs.
Yeah.
So, I'm to your point, I'm very excited to see how tomorrow is going to shape. But even if the Mavs lose, I won't panic because the guy's in place for game 4. Because that's when you really panic if you go down 3-1. But if you're down 2-1, I wouldn't panic because I would believe at home these type of players can step up and even it just like they did in game 2.
And I think the pressure's all in Oklahoma City now, right? Because you had a chance to go up 2-0. Now you've got to go back. It's a day game, which Oklahoma City notoriously does not play well during day games this season.
Wait, this season?
This season, I believe they were rough in day games.
And the Mavs are rough in day games.
Yeah,
in
so
the playoffs.
It's gonna be really interesting. But I think the momentum is completely swung. And the thing for me is, if you're Oklahoma City, you're going into this saying, "Man, Luka's beat up. We completely took him out of the game in game 1, and he did whatever he wanted to do to us in game 2. Like they defended him the same with Ludor, and he just Luka did what he does, and just took over. And Kyrie had 9 points. Like that's not going to happen again. I'll put my life savings that Kyrie's never going to score 9 points or less in a playoff game ever again in his career. Like if you're Oklahoma City, you've got to be like, holy crap! Like we lost to a team where their second best player scored 9 points, and their role players took over. And
they're going home, which they should. They're going to go home. Good game again in game 3.
Yeah, so I think the pressure's all in Oklahoma City. Dallas has done a really, really good job, even after losses, of rebounding, regrouping, and adjusting. And so I think they showed that against the Clippers. Teams rarely will get blown out like the Mavericks did against the Clippers and come back to win the next game. It kind of takes all the momentum out of you. Not only did the Mavs they were down 30 in both those games and still fought back and almost won. So we've seen the resiliency of this team. We've seen what they're capable of. They just got to play their basketball. Like they've got the formula now, and for Oklahoma City, they've got to figure out what are they going to keep defending the way they have been and let the role players get their opportunities, or are they going to start changing things up, which is going to open up the lane for Luka, Kyrie, Gafford, Lively? Like it's going to be really interesting to see right off the bat how Oklahoma City decides to defend Dallas tomorrow.
And let's be honest here. I mean, it's always easier when you're waking up in your own bed.
Oh, yeah.
It's always easier when you're hanging out with your family or your friends or or the single guys on the team. It's always easier when you got your book and
Yep.
you got your speed dials to come
Yeah.
over. I mean, it's
Going to
always
Nick and Sam's and going to Citizen later. Like, you know where to find them.
there you go. So I mean, that's that's probably why role players play better at home
Ah,
because they're comfortable and they got everything they need at home. So I just think that it's so well, just perfect segue to the last word. What's your thoughts on Game 3? Well, first of all, good to see Gafford is healthy after that
yeah,
scare because the Mavs are always better with both bigs instead of just one big,
definitely.
especially with Maxey out.
Yes.
But what's your thoughts going into Game 3, and what would you like to see the Mavericks, really do well to set the tone for getting a win?
I think they got to stay aggressive. I think game one, they
Mm,
were way too passive.
yeah.
We saw Luka especially settle for outside shots. And Kyrie kind of had to play hero ball in the third and brought it to within one. And then Oklahoma City just nailed every shot that they took. Very reminiscent of the Clippers series, game one. I think Dallas just has to stay aggressive like they were last night. I mean, even not every shot's gonna hit, right? But if you're as aggressive as you were, especially inside the paint, Oklahoma can be bullied, right? They're a small team. Chet is very slender in frame.
Hmm.
Gafford and Lively can take over that if they need to. And I love the post up from PJ Washington first play of the game last night. Like get
Yeah.
you get him involved, get his confidence up. Like that's if you can get that, Luke and Kyrie are going to do their thing, but you've got to
Hmm.
get, stay aggressive, get the role guys involved, and keep, for Kyrie, keep doing what you're doing in terms of leadership and bumping up the confidence of those guys.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up PJ Washington because that's what my Game 3 I want to see is start with him. Start with him in the games because, like you mentioned, just getting him going early, it really sets the tone for this whole team because Kyrie and Luka, they can get it going whenever they want. Let's
Yeah.
be honest; the these are the stars that they are. But when PJ has the confidence on offense at the beginning of the game, it just sets the tone for him throughout the totality of the game because that's what you saw in Game 2 against the Clippers. When they were down and they said, "Okay, let's get PJ going," and he had 18 points.
Yep.
So in this series, he had 29 points in Game 2. So I think that's the real key to having a chance in this series. And because I want to respect the Thunder, they're the best team in the West. I don't want to act like the Mavs are going to win this series. I predicted them to win, but to really have a chance in the series, you have to get PJ going so you have a third guy. The Thunder have three guys who are always going to step up. The Mavs, it's always two, and then you have a wild card. Whose turn is it going to be? Exum.
Right.
Is it going to be Washington? Is it going to be THJ, Josh Green? The Gafford and Lively, the
Likely,
bigs.
no.
Derek Jones Jr. Like you don't know. So now I want to see PJ be the bona fide third guy the rest of the series, and hopefully if they advance, down the road, because that's what you brought him in to be. Obviously defense first, but they've talked about it. He can grow into being a third option for this team. You don't want to see them have to spend money and trade away some of their assets to go get a third guy when you have a homegrown guy, quote unquote, because he's from Dallas and he wants to be here. And you see how much he's smiling in Dallas opposed to where he was. So, you can actually grow
Yeah.
him into being a third guy where you don't have to go fish another guy. You can just go fix up your bench.
And he's
You
still
know,
young, 25. I mean, I think it feels
yeah,
like he's been in the league forever, but I mean, this is still this is now a young roster. Where
yeah.
it felt like the Mavericks were old for the last 3 years, and now they're one of the youngest teams.
Which is good to see. And
Yeah.
like you said, his post up game, his floaters around the rim, his dunks, his cutting, and then he can eventually grow his offense. When he hits threes, I mean, That's all you really need from him, because it just shows that this Mavs can be more dynamic offensively in the playoffs. Because
Yeah.
regular season you see it, but in the playoffs when the defense is really tough. So that's what I want to see. I want to see PJ. I honestly want to see Exum too. I want to see Exum get his shot going at home. He did that a little bit at the end of the Clippers series at
Mhm.
home, and he was getting going. So hopefully playing at home will be better for him, because I want to see him get going as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's struggled a little bit, but if the Mavericks can put things away early, get him some garbage time minutes, if necessary, and let him get kind of into a flow. They might need him, down the stretch. I mean, with his defense, if things don't work out, if Tim Hardaway, Junior doesn't keep performing, we might have to see a little bit more of Dante Exum. So he's a pro. He'll stay ready. I think that's not going to be a problem.
All right, you heard it. So make sure y'all subscribe and make sure y'all like. We appreciate the support, like always. And y'all see our username, so make sure y'all follow us on social media as well. So hopefully this gave you a great primer. This is probably one of our best episodes. I mean, this was really good, uh, just from um, obviously our content, but just you know the Mavericks. This team has really been special.
Yeah.
So I feel like this team can really grow into something and really set them up for the next few years. But honestly, they have a chance this year, which is scary to think about where they were a few months ago. So tomorrow is the most important game of the playoffs, game 3 at home. You have a split against the best team in the Western Conference. So let's see some fight. Let's see what they do. And we'll have y'all next week. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.